high up, where even the fastest planes cannot reach, and where the air smells of vanilla and the freshness of the night rain, a huge cumulus cloud floated. It looked like whipped cream in a giant cup of heavenly cocoa. It was here that the most unusual workshop in the world, the Heavenly Pastry Chef's kitchen, was located. The owner of this kitchen was called the dwarf Zephyr. He was very tiny, wearing a soft cap the color of melted milk and an apron embroidered with silver threads that glowed in the dark. Zephyr had round, kind cheeks and a fluffy beard that felt like cotton candy. Every evening, when the sun sank below the horizon, leaving behind only a pink streak of sunset, Zephyr woke up, stretched, and lit his magic stoves. His kitchen was not like an ordinary one. Instead of heavy pots, there were light porcelain bowls that floated in the air by themselves. And instead of ordinary spoons, there were thin sticks made of pure rock crystal. "Well, well," said Zephyr, rubbing his palms. "Today we need to cook something special. The night promises to be quiet, which means that dreams should be light and sweet." He walked over to a huge cabinet that was carved from a single piece of moonstone. Inside it, the rarest ingredients were stored in small glass jars. In one jar, stardust sparkled. Marshmallows sifted it through the thinnest sieve so that dreams were shiny and bright. The other contained moonlight reflections collected from the surface of quiet lakes. They gave dreams a soft, soothing glow. There was a large copper pot on the main stove in the center of the kitchen, but there was no soup boiling in it. The basis for all the dreams of the world, a thick, cloudy dough, was slowly languishing in it. Marshmallow gently stirred it with his crystal wand, and steam rose from the cauldron, taking the forms of strange animals, fairy tale castles, and distant planets. "Let's add a pinch of peace," the dwarf whispered, sprinkling something invisible on the brew, "and a drop of childish laughter to make your dreams joyful." The kitchen was filled with amazing sounds. The bubbles in the cauldron burst with a gentle pop-pop sound, and the breeze that flew in through the open cloud windows played a lullaby melody on the suspended bells. Marshmallows worked slowly, because in the business of making dreams, the most important thing is silence and love. When the base was ready, the dwarf took his wicker basket and walked to the edge of the cloud. He needed to collect some more live ingredients that couldn't be stored in jars. Zephyr tightened his silver apron and slung over his shoulder a basket woven from flexible willow twigs soaked in the Milky Way. To prepare a truly magical dream, some preparations from the cabinet are not enough. We needed live sparks of the night, which cannot be locked in a jar for a long time. The dwarf walked to the very edge of his cloud and whistled softly. Immediately, his faithful companion emerged from the darkness, a tame night breeze named Wiz. Wiz looked like a transparent ribbon that shimmered with all shades of blue. "Let's fly, Whoosh. We need to collect the whispers of sleepy herbs and the scent of night violets," commanded Zephyr, and the breeze picked him up, gently carrying him over the sleeping earth. First, they descended to a forest clearing. Sleepy bluebells grew here, under the shade of old pines. They are silent during the day, but at night, when the first dew falls on them, they begin to make a barely audible sound. Ding dong, it's time to sleep. Marshmallows, carefully, trying not to crumple the delicate petals, caught the sound with an empty palm and carefully folded it into a basket. The sound turned into tiny glowing peas. Then they flew over a quiet garden. There, in the shade of an old gazebo, night violets bloomed. Their fragrance was so thick and sweet that it seemed you could touch it with your hands. Zephyr took out a magic net made of a moon spider's web and began to catch the scent. In the net, the fragrance turned into invisible pink ribbons that curled up comfortably at the bottom of the basket. "And now comes the hard part," the dwarf whispered. "We need an echo of the moon song." They climbed higher, to the very top of the old mountain, where the moon seemed so close that you could reach it with your hand. There, in the crevices of the rocks, lived the echo of the songs that mothers sing to their children all over the world. Zephyr put his ear to the stone and waited for the moment when the breeze brought a fragment of a gentle melody. He quickly caught it with silver tweezers and hid it in a tiny velvet pouch. The marshmallow basket was now glowing and singing softly in different voices. She became heavy from the smells, sounds, and the night's rest. "Go home, whoosh!" Zephyr exclaimed happily. "The cauldron is already boiling. It's time to knead the main recipe of the night." The breeze swiftly carried the dwarf back to his snow-white cumulus cloud. The most important part of the work was ahead, to turn all these finds into soft, fluffy dreams that would spread all over the world. After returning to his cloud kitchen, Zephyr checked the boiler first. The cloudy dough in it has already become lush and snow-white, like freshly fallen snow illuminated by a lantern. It sighed softly, puff, puff, releasing small bubbles that immediately turned into tiny fluffy feathers. "It's time for magic," the dwarf said seriously, and untied his basket. First, he poured the peas of the sounds of sleepy bells into the cauldron. As soon as they touched the dough, a gentle ringing sound went through the kitchen, which even made the cloud walls softer. Then, marshmallows carefully woven pink ribbons of night violets into the overall mass. The dough immediately turned a barely noticeable pale lilac color, and the smell became so cozy that the marshmallow itself yawned sweetly once. But the most important point was the addition of the moon song echo. The dwarf opened a velvet pouch just above the cauldron, and a golden note fluttered out. She began to spin over the brew, and suddenly all the dough in the pot began to pulse rhythmically, as if to music. Zephyr took his large crystal ladle and began to carefully knead the dream. "We'll add a handful of happy meetings to this," he said, adding a shiny powder, "so that children dream of faithful friends and fun games. And here, a pinch of fairy wings, so that everyone can fly higher than the highest mountains in a dream." But the most important point was the addition of the moon song echo. The dwarf opened a velvet pouch just above the cauldron, and a golden note fluttered out. She began to spin over the brew, and suddenly all the dough in the pot began to pulse rhythmically, as if to music. Zephyr took his large crystal ladle and began to carefully knead the dream. "We'll add a handful of happy meetings to this," he said, adding a shiny powder, "so that children dream of faithful friends and fun games. And here, a pinch of fairy wings, so that everyone can fly higher than the highest mountains in a dream." The master carefully observed the color. The dream should not have been too bright, so as not to excite, and not too faded, so as not to be boring. When the substance began to resemble iridescent pearls, Zephyr realized that it was ready. He began pouring the finished dream into special star molds. As soon as the dough was in the mold, it instantly cooled down and turned into a light, weightless cloud, which by itself tended to fly out the window. But the marshmallow held them with silver threads. "A little more patience, my little dreams," he whispered. "Soon you will go to those who are waiting for you very much." The most important part of the night was ahead: delivery. Zephyr needed to be able to deliver these sleepy treats before the moon began to fade. When all the star shapes were filled out, and the kitchen was filled with a quiet, peaceful glow, Zephyr realized it was time to hit the road. He took out his largest hiking backpack, sewn from sunset rags, and carefully put the finished dreams in it. Each dream was as soft as cotton candy and as warm as Mom's palms. "Whoosh! Are you ready?" the dwarf called his faithful assistant. The breeze playfully swirled around the marshmallow, and together they slid off the edge of the cloud. But they didn't fall down like a stone. Zephyr opened his silver parachute, woven from the finest moon threads. The parachute filled with night air, and the dwarf began to descend smoothly, like a piece of fluff, to the sleeping city. From the height, the city looked like a huge carpet, on which the lights of lanterns burned here and there. But Zephyr saw something that others did not see. He noticed beacons of calm in the windows of children's rooms. Wherever there was a dim night light or a favorite toy on the windowsill, they were already waiting for him. The first stop was at a small house with a tiled roof. The marshmallow landed on the ledge so quietly that even the sensitive cat, who was dozing on the chimney, did not move an ear. The dwarf took out the first star from his backpack. It was a dream about flying on a dandelion. He carefully pushed it through the crack in the window. The dream immediately turned into a golden haze and settled on the little girl's pillow. She sighed sweetly in her sleep and hugged her blanket tighter. "That's it. Grow big and fly high," Zephyr whispered. Then they flew over to a multi-story building. There, Zephyr prepared a special gift for a boy who was very afraid of the dark. A dream about a brave knight and the light of the stars. This dream shone a little brighter than the others, dispelling all the shadows in the corners of the room and turning them into kind forest animals. Zephyr looked in every window. To some, he left a dream about a delicious birthday cake. To others, about a secret island in the middle of the ocean. And to others, just a quiet dream without pictures, smelling of fresh grass and rain, so that his head would rest from long school lessons. The work was fast but careful. Zephyr knew he couldn't make a mistake. If you give too noisy a nap, the child will wake up in the middle of the night, and if it is too cold, he will freeze under the covers. So he checked every dream with his little mood thermometer. When the backpack was almost empty and the first barely noticeable gray streak began to break through in the east, Zephyr realized that his mission for today was completed. All the sleepy treats have found their owners. The city plunged into the deepest and sweetest sleep, the one that happens just before dawn. When only a handful of stardust remained in the backpack at the bottom, and the lanterns on the streets of the city began to go out one by one, Zephyr realized that his night shift was coming to an end. The sky turned from blue-black to a delicate lavender, and the air became cool and crisp. "It's time to go home. Whoosh," the dwarf called softly, and the faithful breeze obediently offered its transparent back. They began to rise up, piercing through the layers of morning mist that covered the ground like fluffy cotton wool. The higher they climbed, the warmer it got. Finally, their native cumulus cloud appeared ahead. Now, in the rays of the approaching dawn, it no longer looked like cotton candy, but shone with delicate gold. Zephyr stepped onto the soft, cloudy threshold of his kitchen. The huge copper cauldron had already cooled down and was shining cleanly, washed by the morning dew. All the bowls and crystal sticks were in their places, glistening in the first rays of the sun. The workshop was in perfect order, and only the subtle scent of vanilla reminded me of the important work that had been going on here a few hours ago. The dwarf sighed wearily but contentedly. He took off his silver-threaded dress apron and hung it on a frozen zipper hook. Then he went to a small table at the very edge of the cloud and brewed his favorite dawn tea. He made this tea from the petals of sunbeams and droplets of spring water. After taking the first sip, Zephyr felt the warmth spreading through his small body, relieving the night fatigue. He looked down at the waking world. Far below, the children were opening their eyes, stretching in their beds and smiling, remembering the amazing adventures that Zephyr had given them that night. "Well done, Wake Up," the dwarf whispered. "A new day is coming, full of real miracles." After finishing his tea, Zephyr went to his bedroom. She was in the softest part of the cloud. Instead of a bed, there was a hammock stretched between two constellations that never set below the horizon. The dwarf climbed into it, covered himself with a light blanket made of mist, and put a pillow stuffed with dandelion down under his head. Whiz! His faithful Breeze curled up at the foot of the hammock and purred softly like a big, invisible cat. Zephyr closed his eyes. He didn't need magic recipes to fall asleep. His conscience was clear and his heart was full of kindness. A minute later, he was already sleeping the soundest and most peaceful sleep in the world. The sun has risen over the world. A new day has begun. But somewhere out there, high in the sky, on a golden cloud, the little pastry chef was already having his own dreams, preparing for the next night when he would light his cookers again and start brewing happiness for all people on earth.